trapped inside the devil's den. Now myself trapped inside the devil's den.
Another day, another video with weird lighting. So I had a little time before work, and I figured I might as well make a video. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Nicole. I'm the creator of the Unwanted Book Club channel here on YouTube, and lately I've been kind of going through my library, just sorting out books that I want to keep, sorting out books that I want to donate. So much so that in the surrounding areas, libraries have stopped accepting donations.
Nani?
On that note, I've also been kind of going through books that I forgot that I had, reading more literature and reading more outside of my comfort zone to see what I might actually want to hold on to, what I might actually still be into. And it's not a lot, which is good news for my bookshelf, but it's kind of really made me think about where literature is actually going. So I've been thinking a lot about the market and thinking a lot about the books that I've purchased in the past and books that when I do go to Barnes & Noble that I feel like reading or that even pique my interest anymore. It is so far removed from the old days of like, just look at the back of a cover, read the synopsis of a book, and decide whether that's something that I'm interested in. One, now for me to be able to put a book down because everything is so tropey and so cliche and so predictable, and that kind of made me think about where we're actually headed as far as marketing goes and as far as reading goes. Because if we're promoting all of this material that is so predictable and all of this material that is tropey and is cliche because it is what the audience wants, right? It really starts to raise a question of where exactly are we going? Where are we going as writers? What expectations are we setting for the market and for publishers as readers and consumers? Now, I did make a couple of videos regarding like the cancellation and boycotting and about I don't really believe in readers canceling authors. However, I do know that in a capitalistic economy such as, in the US, what we're experiencing right now is a lot of consumerism, and that consumerism tends to feed into the marketing and tends to feed into the expectations. Similarly to Disney with the live action remakes that they just keep spilling out endless movie after movie after movie because they had a couple of good ones right after the success of Beauty and the Beast. They rolled out like 4 in 1 year and then they just kept going. So they're not really worried so much about the quality as they are about putting out as much as possible to get to the audience as much as possible. Now, I don't really think that that means that, you can't enjoy it at all because it's just they're going to see dollar signs and then that's all they're going to see and that's all we're going to get. But as far as the book marketing goes, I am still seeing a lot of kind of like the late stage of where we were when Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey were kind of put out there. No, I'm not gonna lie, I was on the train of like hating Twilight for the sake of hating Twilight because it was so overhyped. But then when I actually sat down to read it, I didn't actually hate it. And I kind of was wondering why. And I think part of the reason is because I didn't read it until at least like 5 or 6 years after the hype had already died down, after everyone had already picked a side of you either hate it or you love it. And by that point, we were kind of getting exposed, we were getting overexposed actually to all of the books on the market that are just promoting the sex, the smut. A lot of carnal, just smut books, which fine if you're into that sort of thing. But it's too much. It's gotten to the point where it's too much. In comparison to what we're seeing today, Twilight still had a story. It still had something else aside from the, a vampire and a werewolf finds me hot and it's this love triangle. Instead of just, how dark and deep and dirty can we actually go down this rabbit hole? Instead of constantly escalating the stakes because all we're really looking for is appealing to an audience to sell to that's just going to enjoy that side of literature, it has gotten to the point where it is dominating the market, it is dominating social media, and all of the platforms have turned it into this Carolina Reaper contest of who can deal with the spiciest dirt. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it because I don't have a problem with smut. I don't have a problem with erotica. I do like reading it on occasion, even like the ridiculous silly stuff that I want to eventually talk about because it's so ridiculous it might as well be a parody of itself. However, as a writer, it is kind of concerning to see that seems to be, and that appears to be, especially on social media, all anyone is talking about and all anyone cares about. That aside, I really also wanted to talk about just the tropey, cliched way of writing these books that are advertised as romance when we all know that the only reason that you're picking it up is because somebody said that it's got a dirty scene in it. But they're advertised as romance and the story is it has a story, but the story feels very tropey, very cliche, and it does tend to be very predictable and very lazy. Now, you do have two sides of this. You have the side that absolutely loves this shit, and they'll die on a hill saying that it's the best thing that they ever read. Then you'll have the other side saying, well, that's not actually reading. And I think the conflict in this is what your actual preference is when you're reading. Some people actually just want to enjoy the dirty stuff. They don't really have time for much of anything else, so they're looking for an easy read because it just gets them through the day and it gets them through to the next chapter, and, you know, they read a book. Then you have the other side that wants more substance, wants more of that spark, more of that old traditional writing feel that comes with finding a really good book that just speaks to you. Now, the tropes and the cliches kind of worked for a while. I know Disney was doing all of their dark, twisted fairy tales, which I haven't even read any of them, but I'm so over it at this point that I'm about ready to dump them. I have like 5 or 6 of them that have just been sitting on my shelf forever, and while they sound intriguing, it really feels like the only selling point is that intriguing turnaround, is that intriguing point. The potential for the book is what some readers actually fall for, and then they read it and they end up disappointed because it could have been so much better. I think that a lot of the encouraging with the tropes and with the cliches and how we're actually selling all of this stuff without any substance. I mean, let's face it, if something has been done 800 times, there's only so much you can get out of it. It's practically bone now, and even that's being chewed to the marrow. The downside to that is pretty much sending a message to writers and sending a message to publishers that you don't really have to try so hard anymore. You don't really have to get into the nitty gritty. You don't really have to dig any deeper than surface level ideas that have been done to death 800 times before, but now it has a new slight twist, so people are going to be interested in it. And we're so desperate for something new that we buy it. I think it's just this vicious circle that's kind of feeding into everything, and it really takes away from what we are actually looking for when it comes to literature. I think that the readers on the flip side that are really tired of the tropes and tired of the cliches and tired of feeling like we have to either purchase something that only has a slight difference, or we have to go the whole other direction and the whole other extreme and go into a genre and a writing style that is really not our type, and so we're just kind of left floundering with nothing left to read. What those readers tend to be looking for more so is just the kind of writing that fed into our curiosity. I think that that's pretty much the main selling point for any book, even when it is a trope or a cliche. It's the curiosity. It is, what is in these pages? What is this story that's going to unfold? And I think that we've kind of dwindled that down to the absolute minimal expectation just in order to sell paper. It really kind of removes the meaning of what we've actually been looking for and what we actually want and what we're actually hungering for. And as long as we're encouraging that, that's all we're really going to get. And it's not really a problem if some people, you know, are just into that type of thing, but I'm really hoping for a turnaround, and soon, because it's really feeling like that's all we're pretty much getting. Most stories, even the ones that are different, tend to be very predictable. I do remember, I think like old Hollywood used to have a saying that everything had to have a happy ending, that couples always had to end up together, that the bad guy always had to get caught, and eventually it just became so predictable. It became so predictable to the point where you could see the ending coming from a mile away, and the only reason for curiosity was like, okay, how do we get there? And while that can be enough to carry a story to that point, these days in movies that are making, you know, big splashes like Parasite or books like The Grace here, they not only have unpredictable circumstances, but they have unpredictable endings. You don't really know what's coming down the pike, and it is that curiosity that guiding you through the story. Now, the trick of it is keeping up with the pacing and keeping up with enough events to kind of feed into that curiosity. So it might be predictable at times, but then it becomes a challenge to the reader to prove whether or not their predictions were correct. And then you have the writers that, you know, they'll lead them on with the red herrings and they'll pull the rug out from under them. Sometimes it works, other times it can irritate readers because they knew it was coming and it just felt like a cheap cop-out. But honestly, that's what I had to realize, like, about my writing and about what I'm looking for in reading is something new and something fresh and something different enough that I can't see the ending, that I can't really predict what's going to happen next, but it's enough events to keep me interested into wanting to find out. The tropes and the cliches definitely have a place. I'm not completely against them, and I get it, but it's the fact that it's so much and it's in pretty much every genre. I mean, I've been reading more so nonfiction, I've been reading into classics, I've been reading into, you know, things that are outside my preferences, just because I'm trying to find something new and something different and something that is not going to make me say, well, like, I could have guessed that. The YA, I feel like, is especially bad is because it really is promoting this kind of ideology that literature is only meant to be as good as the next Marvel movie or as good as the next Disney remake. You're not going to get much better than that. And I think that that's kind of setting up this future market for writers, that all you really have to worry about is writing something with slight tweaking or writing something that has been done before, but it's okay because everyone is in this phase now, so you can just keep doing it. I mean, every time we're in a vampire phase, we are flooded with vampire books or werewolf books or fairy books that just don't seem to die. And it's not that I have a problem with that kind of literature. ACOTAR, I think, could have been a really, really, really good series. I think it is overhyped as hell. I was bored reading it. The love scenes were so toxic between Tamlin and Rhysand, and I don't know how it took off. I really don't. The only thing that I can figure is that the readers are usually so young and they don't know any better. They haven't experienced that spark and that newness to the point where A Court of Thorns and Roses just feels so new and so fresh, when Julie Kagawa did it with Iron King like 10 years ago. There's so much out there that I haven't really been exposed to, but it's just a matter of recycling these same ideas and reusing them, and then now adding the new spice and adding this dark carnal mystery to it to keep the curiosity there, but now it's feeding into another side and another type of desire to keep the reader wanting more. I don't know, it's kind of ruined my love for reading. A friend of mine and I kind of formed like this sort of book club at work, and we were supposed to read The Ballad together, and I was really trying. I was really looking forward to this book. I loved the Hunger Games series, and I was eager to see what Suzanne Collins was going to offer because it was a Splinter book, because it was about snow, and because it's directed to a new type of audience that's going to have different expectations than we did 10 years ago. So I was eager to see what was going on, and I think I didn't even get halfway through the book, and it just felt so cliched and so tropey and so predictable that I had to stop. And I was so disappointed and I was so angry because I feel like every book that I pick up, I only get like 2 chapters in and I'm just done. I read the Wither series recently and it just didn't hit the same. The first book was the only really good book in that series because you are wondering, what is going on? What is happening? But after you've read it a couple of times, after you've read it first to feed your curiosity, you read it second with that next perspective, you're done. Like, there's nothing else to really discover because there's only so much meat to it. But I can read books like Redeeming Love, I can reread books like the Mindy Stearns Clark series that I haven't read since I was a kid, and because it's been a while since I read it, it's like refeeding my curiosity all over again. But there has to be substance to it. For me personally, it can't just be like, well, there's a hot guy with abs in it, because it just, so there are hot guys with abs on dating apps, on movies, on what, who cares? I personally don't understand it. I get that there's a need and I get that there's a want and a desire, but I think it's gotten out of hand. It's gotten past the point of being irritating because a lot of readers feel like we are being neglected and we are being starved out just to feed into the masses with this new type of mentality and this new type of want and consumerism. And it's gotten to the point where it's oversaturated the market. It's now leaking into every single genre, and it seems to be all anyone cares about. I don't know, it's really starting to take away from the reason why we read in the first place. What's going to happen next? What is this person going to learn from this? What is going to happen? Because in life, we don't know what's going to happen next either, but it can be reassuring to read about somebody going through either similar circumstances or circumstances beyond their control and just see how they come out of it on the other side. When you have so many tropes and so many cliches, it takes away from the feeling of these characters being people, and it just makes them feel like props. When I'm reading books anymore, it just reminds me of like people playing with like Barbie dolls or action figures. And it's just, there's no real story, there's no real purpose to it, and as long as you get these scenes in here, people will eat it up. can still turn it around. And I know that everything comes to an end eventually, but what worries me is when this phase does come to an end, what is the next one that it's going to lead into? If we're already setting up these expectations and we're not really encouraging, writers to want to dive deeper into the story, past the surface level story, past the first layer of story, we see the same thing happening with filmmakers. Like, where do we really go from here? And now we're talking about AI writing, and we're talking about AI threatening. And here's the thing I have to say about AI. I don't think AI is going to surpass writers unless this is all readers really want. If all readers really want is a surface level story, then yeah, any AI robot can just slap something together. Intelligence goes, even if it is artificial intelligence. I mean, you've seen the commercials. There's always this uncanny feeling because they lack that understanding. They lack that conscience. I don't think that that's really a threat unless this is all we really want. Unless all we really look for is the superficial, then all we're gonna get is the superficial, and it's going to be rough for writers everywhere. I don't mean to sound all doom and gloom. It's just something that I'm noticing, and something that I've been noticing, something that concerns me as a writer, because personally I love layering my stories. I love reading stories that have layering in there and that dive deep into subtext and purpose and things that I didn't know to really think about or consider before until I started learning about it. And the fact that nobody on AuthorTube is really learning about it or really teaching about it is also concerning, because it's still only teaching the surface level stuff, and it's just going to continue to feed into this era. And again, I don't know where we're gonna go from here. It's not gonna be good. Let me know what you think in the comment section. If you like this video, go ahead and feel free to hit the thumbs up. Hit that notification bell if you're willing to wait for more. I will see you guys in my next video.
The demons you forgot about. In the blind spot, sitting in the bed. Now I'm making up beat. Invisible to me, yeah. Corrupt your souls, don't know. Got black moon behind the drywall. Couldn't even see, even when you bleed.